Friends and enemies, welcome to yet another edition of the Canadian Bitcoiners podcast. I'm Len the Legend, and today I'm going to be interviewing once again. I just learned it's almost a year to the day that I last talked to Fundamentals. He's part of the 40 hours per week crew, which seems to be the topic of the week, and I'd like to talk to him about that. But he's not just a consumer of content. He's a producer as well. He does the Rock Paper Bitcoin podcast. See, unlike me, not only do I not reach the 40 hours per week, I'm not much of a consumer in the podcasting world. So I am somebody you wouldn't strive to be. Be something better than me. That's all I would suggest. But do run your own node, of course. And Fundamentals 2 is not just doing all that. He's now a author, and we'll be talking about his upcoming book. But before we do, I have a couple of things I got to check off my list of things to do. And number one, we have sponsor. Number one, Easy DNS. And we use Easy DNS to host our content. And of course, you should too. Easy DNS, and what is it? Well, it's not just simply for registering domains. It's not just simply for registering websites or email servers, but you could also do virtual private servers with them. So there's lots of different options. Like you could do a Nostr relay if you want to do that. If you're in Nostr and you don't want to do it the hassle of doing it yourself, you could have EasyDNS manage it for you. You could do nodeless IO implementations. A lot of different options over there. But the beautiful thing about them, not only have they been in this business for quite some time, you can pay with Bitcoin, right? Like Bitcoin is a medium of exchange, and EasyDNS is going to be willing to take your Bitcoin in order to facilitate the purchase. They offer top-notch service. Mark and his team are second to none. And he helped us build our website and did it from the ground up. So that was wonderful stuff. So yeah, if you're looking for DNS purchases, email hosting, web hosting, migrating your email over, migrating your web server over, these are the people to talk to. You won't get rugged. Use our promo code CBP Media. 50% will be taken off your initial purchase. And that means might as well load up your cart and just do a big purchase. Sponsor number 2 is Bull Bitcoin. Bull Bitcoin in 23 countries in the world. But either way, I'm going to talk about Canada. Canada, we just had a big change with Bull Bitcoin. And if you are using them, you might notice that the website looks different. It's now faster. It's now better. It's now, well, it's a huge improvement. If you're not a Bull Bitcoin user, what the heck are you doing? What are you waiting for? Either way, you could buy Bitcoin with them. You could sell Bitcoin. Look, the price of Bitcoin, 96,000. Are we running up for some reason? Either way, lots of different options you could do with Bull Bitcoin. On-chain Lightning. So if fees are high, you're good to go either way. You could also start spending your Bitcoin in one or two different ways with Bull Bitcoin. You could use their bill service to pay your bills, like you have credit card bill, you have car payment, whatever. And you could use your Bitcoin to pay for that. It's pretty darn cool. Second thing, spending Bitcoin in the real world just doesn't really work here in Canada. Maybe some parts of the world, El Salvador namely, you can start spending Bitcoin and merchants will accept it. But in Canada, not so much. And how do we do that, get around this? Well, Bull Bitcoin sells these gift cards. You can buy these gift cards with your Bitcoin and start indirectly spending your Bitcoin in the real world. Check it out. Really cool stuff. Open an account. Our referral code is below. If you do that, 0.25% will be taken off your fees in perpetuity. So check them out. They are wonderful, non-custodial. And with that being said, I got the formalities out of the way. Let's bring in the man of the hour, Fundamentals. How are you, buddy?
Good. What's up, man?
All right, brother.
Dude, it's impressive. It's really impressive, honestly, how you do these ad reads right before the show. Like, I was sitting here thinking, I would forget everything I want to talk about if I did these reads. And you do it every show. You do it every episode.
I think it's just repetition. And with EasyDNS, they've been a sponsor with us for longer than Bull Bitcoin. And I'm going to say they've been sponsoring us for about 2 to 3 years, give or take. Actually, around 3 years. And Bull Bitcoin's around a 2-year mark, which means that, it's not too hard to remember. If you're just doing it every week, a couple of times a week, it's just, and Joey's a real, he's a pro at this. I'm just filling in. I can't carry his jock when it comes to doing the ad reads. He's the man. If you want to hear a true professional do an ad read, listen to Joey. He's the guy that does it best. But
well, you know what you're better than? You're better than Joey at?
Not very much, but go ahead.
Booking me on and coming and interviewing me. I'm going to start to feel a certain way at some point.
Oh, yeah. Well, there you go. You know what? It's awesome to talk to you. I talked to you, and like you were mentioning to me, it's been almost a year to the day that we last spoke. And it's good to have you on again. Good to see Boom Dust in the chat over there. So, got a question for you. You're part of the 40 hours per week crew, correct?
Represent 40 hours per week. Yeah.
How'd you get in?
Shout out. Well, I don't know. Did I beg Rod Palmer for entry into the crew? I think I just started producing 40 hours per week of podcasts, and then they had no choice but to let me in.
Just because of that gives you automatic entry into the club, right? Like you're a card-carrying member. Let's be honest. Listening to 40 hours per week, what speed do you do it at?
I'm a 1x maxi.
Holy shit! And you still get 40 hours plus in?
I mean, to be fair, I think a lot of it is my own podcast at this point, but like I was really like, I think there's a reason Boomer and I developed a friendship early, because I think I was probably close to his level of listening to podcasts. Over time, I think I've just meandered towards my own content, and there are a couple of podcasts I still listen to, but not nearly as many as I used to. But 1X is like, I believe that the creator did the thing in 1X, and I feel like I'm going to lose signal if I do anything other than that.
Favorite podcast to listen to aside your own?
I gotta go with my Bugle Boys.
So they're every
great.
week, top of the list. You're listening to Rod and crew. And
yeah, absolutely. It's, for weekly, like ongoing weekly, I got the Bugle and Ungovernable Misfits. Those guys are great. One of the ongoing podcasts I like is called The Path to Bitcoin. It's like very heady. It's no frills, no music, no ads. Just a dude, just a smart guy who gets on the mic and starts talking about really intelligent. He makes Bitcoin sound quite intelligent. It's very thought-provoking, very cool podcast. And then recently I've been marathoning the Reorg with Pierre and Bitstein.
I've not listened to that. I'm not even aware of. I'm not much of a podcast listener, so you're gonna have to clue me in.
It's a good one. It's just like, if you want to like catch up on like Austrian economics and what they did, what they have done in this recent version of what they do is they're reading all these old papers that were written in the they call it the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute mempool, but it's like a bunch of old papers, then just to see how they held up, right? And it's pretty cool.
You following this whole saga that's going on right now in the Bitcoin land? Like, I'm not sure if you are aware.
Which one?
It's the upper turn drama, right? Here at Castle CBP, like we're nuts over here. We are totally knee deep in this. We want to educate folks. I'm knocking on people's doors. I'm asking them, where do you stand? A, do you run a node? B, are you a upper turn less than 83 byte maxi? If not, why? So I'm just trying to find out what people's stances are over here. But for you, I mean, have you been following this? Does it even bother you at all, or is it just basically just?
I'll tell you what. Okay, I'll tell you what I'm bothered by about this whole thing. You're probably actually closer in age to me than most of the people in Bitcoin.
I turned 47 this year.
Yeah, right. I turned 50.
And, so we're very close.
So, like, if you're Gen X, and we're not as good at the internet probably as the younger generation. We're also not the consensus of Bitcoin. So, like, I yield to the fact that my voice isn't the consensus. Okay, but I think. Every once, like when I see what like Mechanic is doing, and I see what like Luke Dash is doing, and then I see, we had our bit devs yesterday. Shout out Evan Kalutis, Rob Hamilton, leading our Philly bit devs yesterday. We went through the GitHub thread, and the thing I guess the thing I find upsetting, it's not bothersome and it's not a complaint, because I don't like complaining to people who can't do anything about it. I don't like those kinds of complaints. Okay, my issue is, like, on the internet, there's no way to really have a productive discussion, because only like the most inflammatory comments and the most exaggerated speech gets noticed. And I find a lot of the discussion points that get discussed are real. They seem really childish to me. Like, oh, if you do this, Bitcoin will no longer be money. Bitcoin, and then without any supporting argument, without an actual explanation about why that is. People just like to say the sky is falling, right? And that's not to say that the people on that side are necessarily wrong. They're just not making a very good argument, in my opinion, as to why they're right. They were just so if I see one side is basically just using tropes, like kind of using like internet argumentative tropes, I'm not too impressed by that. And my general sense is, I don't know. I don't have a problem with the Opportune field. You can. It's actually. I mean, I didn't realize this until last night, but like, it's literally meant to be able to delete it. Like, it's not a UTXO that's going to stay. It's not something that's going to stay in the mempool forever. You can prune it. And I don't have a problem with Opportune being used that way and people paying for it. I don't have a big problem with it. I don't think it's like I don't make this connection to say Bitcoin's not money anymore. And I know like a big part of this argument is like, well, we want Bitcoin to be money, right? And only money. I'm sympathetic to that notion.
It's when it becomes an unspendable UTXO and then it's stuck there forever. And then
like, is the purpose of Bitcoin to be graffiti, to be information, to be And I actually am very sympathetic to that argument. I don't know if we have the like capacity as a community to distinguish whether or not like free speech is like how can you really detangle free speech from money? And I don't know I honestly don't know the answer to this. A lot of people are acting like they know the answer. And like, if anything is being done that's not directly related to it being money, then it's wrong. And I don't know, like, I don't see that, or I don't see that as a strong argument. This thing is here. It's open source, and people are going to do what they're going to do with it. And I would like to hear better arguments, I guess is what I'm saying, than what I'm hearing if for the NACs. Right.
Well, not much has been talked about in terms of like vetting this, in terms of having discussions why it is. It just seemed like it came out of left field to me. Maybe it's not. Maybe there has been discussion. Right. Yeah. And so that's the thing where I seem to have a bit of a problem, or a big problem with it, is that there is this change. I mean, albeit very small, but it's this change that is being pushed upon by Bitcoin Core. And Bitcoin Core is where that's the beginning of all nodes. Like, Knots is a PR of that. Like, it's a
fork.
It's a fork of that. So like, yeah. So if you look at it, it's directly forked from that. So, and then it has to make a change now to what it has to do with the Opportune. But it all stems from Bitcoin Core. And without much discussion, I just don't like that they're just pushing something without discussing with people. Number one. Number two, the unintended consequences, we will probably not know what they are until years in the future. But maybe, just maybe, we could hash out what some of these may be if we just put enough time and effort to think it through, test it, put it on test, and just fucking do shit like that. And just, let's take things slow. We have one shot at this. Really one shot. Yeah. If we fuck this up, if somehow Bitcoin fucks up along the way, people, businesses, governments are not going to look at Bitcoin the same way. And we can't fuck it up. And what it is right now, in my opinion, works very well. Could it be better? Hell yeah. But could it be a lot worse? Fucking right. Look at all the shitcoins.
So yeah, I agree. So I guess my point that I would like people to walk away with is that I'm not even judging the action or what they're talking about. I see a dysfunctional fire department, and that's what's upsetting me. Like, I think that it's like, oh my God, are these guys really going to be able to come together and put out a real fire when it really happens? Because we're seeing, Bitcoin Core, that side is never good at telling us what they're about to do. I'm remembering the speedy trial thing from maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was Taproot.
Yeah, well, it was after Taproot was speedy trial, and then there was something else that they wanted to put in, and they said, well, it worked for Taproot, so we're going to do speedy trial again for, I forgot what it was supposed to be for. But that was the last time I remember there being such a ruckus. And it's pretty much anytime Bitcoin Core wants to do something, they're pretty bad at communicating, I guess. And
Yeah, they're computer scientists, right? Like
look, the
they're
side that's complaining against them is like in control of like massive influencer class, right? So you do have to take that into account too. Like, so they have their communication, their talking points pretty well. They're just bad right now. Those talking points are really bad, right? But like, they have all the, not, whatever, Ocean and all those. There are positive qualities of all of these things, but I want to make an objective point that they have like big podcast influencers that are investors in their company.
sure.
And, so they have an advantage, and we should judge them that way. Like we should judge them. Like I say this about Jack Mallers a lot too. Like we should judge him like he has coaches. Like he has
We'll
coaches.
talk about Maulers today, by the way.
Like,
We'll have
but we should judge these people by the fact that they actually have good communication resources, right? Bitcoin Core does not. They are like, I don't know what they do, but every once in a while they'll just pop out and say, "Hey, we're doing this," and everyone, they don't understand. It's kind of like the Fed, right? Like back in the day when everyone would freak out because, like, I remember Alan Greenspan saying the word "the" when he meant that, and everyone thought, "Oh my God, this guy's going to raise rates by 300 basis points."
There was something, I think it was Volcker, they were saying that depending on his mannerisms, it was an indication which way the rates are going to be. And so, yeah, people are looking into like just the minutest of details that people are just displaying, like what they're saying, what their actions are, and trying to take that and compute it into something that it's going to move the market one way or another. It's fucked up in a way, but
it's not a terrible analogy because Bitcoin Core is kind of like the Fed in a certain way. Like we are beholden to their decisions now. They're not doing anything to the monetary policy.
Ultimately, it's the node runners. It doesn't matter if they can do it.
That's right, and that's right. How it's more, I think what frustrates people more is what they won't and don't do. Except we all get together and fight when they decide they are going to do something too.
And I want to talk about Jack Mallers quickly.
Sure,
he's getting a lot of flack.
Is he?
Yeah. So
today because he announced the lending platform, right?
Yeah, and there's been a lot of flack today about the 12% and shit. We talked about it yesterday. The CBP, we broke this. It seems like, but either way,
what's 12%? The interest rate?
Okay. Yeah. So when you borrow, when you do that borrowing, that's what it is. So
yeah, I'm pretty ignorant on the lending side because I don't engage
like
really there.
Not only is it 12% is rather high, another sticking point people are saying is they're using a third party to custodian the Bitcoin. So, and I don't think it's bad in a way.
It's always an issue.
Well, right? I'll explain. As soon as you hand off the Bitcoin to somebody else, as soon as you give the keys to somebody else, if they hold it themselves or they give it to somebody else, it's not your keys. It's not your fucking Bitcoin at that moment. And so just if you have an issue with them giving it to somebody else, why would you give it to them in the first place? So there's far better ways you could accumulate money than just borrowing against your Bitcoin.
But everyone's upset with Strike for having a lending platform with a loan shark interest rate, basically.
It seems like that's the thing, but would anybody consider using this when there's so many other alternatives out there? If you have a hard asset like a house, for instance, getting a loan from it is going to be far, far less in terms of the and then it's not going to be subjected to the same type of volatility. If Bitcoin goes down quite a bit, you're going to be forced to fund more of it in order to maintain the loan to value, right? So with your house, let's be honest.
Here's my take.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the market's going to sort this out. Honestly, there is a if you put Bitcoin up for collateral, right? You can. I believe lenders are going to start competing for those types of loans, and they're going to offer lower and lower and lower rates eventually. And the thing is, like, you can I actually write a chapter in my book about this, and it's the only thing that actually is not original to me because.
Wait, before you go any further, name of the book?
Oh, name of the book, Bitcoin for Institutions. I know it is what it is. And it's exactly what the book is. Let me clarify too, that book has 3 sections. Section 1, Bitcoin is for individuals. Section 2, individuals run institutions. Section 3, institutional Bitcoin. And look, I have a long career. I have a 30-year career of being an actuary and creating risk solutions for complicated financial systems. So this book is really an extension of how does Bitcoin work for somebody. If you know me or anything about me for the last 3 years that I've been in this space and how I think about finance, it's very adversarial to traditional finance. It's very critical, very strongly asking, do we really need this? Is the world of hard money going to really want this? So I think it's pretty thoughtful from that perspective. There are things I work with directly, like pensions and annuities, and I have a lot of experience. And so this is part of the book, establishing myself as the expert in those things. Structured credit happens to be something that I couldn't resist writing about because of some of the new solutions that are hitting the market, not the Strike lending platform, but mostly the battery finance idea where you put Bitcoin as collateral and the lender never calls it, right? For 4 years, or there's like the 4-year window. I believe that, like, first of all, the basic thesis is that a degenerate posting their Bitcoin for a loan is going to be better credit than anybody in the world who's posting non-Bitcoin, right? And so there's this like arbitrage opportunity because the majority of the world doesn't realize this. So the majority of the world operates on this seniority structure of debt, where the most senior debt has the lowest rates and it's viewed as the most likely to be paid back. If you have 10 loans and only one of them will give you your Bitcoin back if you pay it back, you're going to basically, you will rug all 9 of the other loans to pay off that one loan, right? So what's the most senior loan there? It's the one with Bitcoin. That's the thing that I find really fascinating. And so like the Strike lending thing, I could care less about, honestly. It's just like, okay, it's a guy who doesn't understand finance, has this company that does these things, whatever, right?
Wait. I want to just your take on Mallard's not understanding finance.
Not at the complex level that he's engaged in. So I was actually very, very, very critical of the recent news of the I don't want to be disrespectful and call it a strategy copycat, but we'll call it the second mover of the strategy playbook.
You're talking 21 Capital?
Yeah. So second mover strategy playbook. This is really complicated stuff. Financial engineering in fiat is complicated, but not, like there's a lot of morons who do it well. They're perfectly fine. The big reason for that is you can print money, and if you have a big complicated structure, like where you have like 50 legs and one of them, maybe one of them fails, you can't paper over it and you can look at the thing in total and it's going to be okay. If you have legs now that are structured in Bitcoin and like they're going to get liquidated because you can't do anything about it, I'm pretty sure the strategy people understand this and what they're doing. And I would go out on a limb and say they probably do this well, right? They probably, especially as the first, they're probably fine. This company is probably fine too, but my problem wasn't with Jack Mallers, to be honest. My problem was with Tether and Cantor selecting him to be the CEO. That was a clear message to me that they don't want a real CEO. Like they want somebody who's just going to rubber stamp. They're just going to rubber stamp everything they do.
A puppet, so to speak.
I mean, I don't like to be disrespectful. I'll
say it.
Yes, but they want somebody who's not going to get in their way, right? And not going to have an executive point of view to say that's a risk we shouldn't sell, or have you really vetted this? Can you really prove to me that we should take this to market? And like that requires somebody who really has a lot of experience. The fact is, again, not being disrespectful to Jack, but has he been involved in a single complicated financial transaction? I don't think so. It's just, it was a strange choice to me for this big announcement. That's all.
With
It kind of
respect to
sent the message to me that they want to run this thing themselves, and they just need somebody. I mean, hopefully it's not nefarious where like they're actually going to rug people and they're setting him up to take the fall and like go to prison.
Well, Boomdust makes a great point. Mullers is a great PR/marketing guy, and that he does really well. I find.
I agree.
You put him in front of a camera, you give some talking points, and he's able to articulate it in a way that normies could understand it. Didn't he have that example of peanuts or something like that, or something that it was just he was able to show off moving Bitcoin. It just worked out well. And fuck, I can't remember exactly what it was, but he seems to be able to speak the same language normies do. So he's good in that regard. So
no doubt.
Yeah.
So like, I'm not criticizing. It's like those things aren't a problem. See, like, but him running a company that is designed to do complicated financial engineering, and him having like kind of no experience and no real sense of that world. And that's, I don't know, that's just something I'd say I'm calling out a risk. Now, I have a very general view of these types of companies to begin with that is suspicious and adversarial. And I think we all should, because where I come from, which is the insurance industry, people seem to forget that the insurance industry had a lot to do with the financial crisis. Now, why is that? Because they had a regulatory arbitrage. So I always stop me if I say anything that's familiar or rhyming with this situation. But they were buying up mortgage-backed securities, which were considered to be of high quality. And in 2004 and 2005, they definitely were. And they were desperate for that yield, and it helped them with their capital requirements. And they became a beast with an unlimited appetite for it. And so more and more manufacturers came to fill this need, but there were only so many AAA loans they can put in packages. So as over time, they had to fill them with, they had to actually manufacture bad loans just so they can put them in these packages. Like, the tail really did end up wagging the dog. This is a beast that needs to be fed. That was only a $3 trillion loss. I say only because the great financial crisis was $20 trillion lost value. But that was the thing that took the mountain down, right? That was the thing. You fast forward to today, the insurance industry has identified a quote unquote regulatory arbitrage. They're too stupid to like actually figure out how to buy Bitcoin. And I say that, I know people want to defend them and say the laws and the regulations. Anyone, honestly, a motivated company can figure this out. A motivated company could buy Bitcoin and figure out later how to deal with it. They can get permitted practices from their regulators. It's like there's so much coddling of institutions. This is like a big problem I have. It's one of the reasons I wrote the book. I just feel like people are just they coddle them like, oh, it's so understandable that they won't do the obvious things. So now they get exploited by strategy. And then there's going to be many more parties that come in to try to feed this beast, selling them essentially Rube Goldberg Bitcoin exposure. It's extremely, extremely indirect, and it only exists because of their adherence to rules that really, it's not like the rules don't say they should do this. There just aren't any rules for how to deal with Bitcoin in their space. And so they'll always do what's easy. So they've identified a quote unquote regulatory arbitrage that allows them to get better returns. And they're going to hoover this up until whoever is providing this demand cries uncle and says, we can't do this anymore. And so
at that point, there's going to be the price shock.
We're going to forget about strategy, by the way, by that point. By that point, strategy will be gone with all their Bitcoin, right? They will have done, because they'll be remembered as the one that did it fine. I do believe that they're probably fine. Like, they're very accountable. They actually do seem smart. Just, putting that out there.
In one respect, though, I'm going to argue they don't, is that they don't hold their own keys. And that's
Well,
a
I
huge
get
thing.
that. But as fiat, I understand as this is a fiat game. Okay. Like this financial engineering is a fiat game, but you don't want to get caught with your pants down on certain legs of your structure that blow up your whole structure because you didn't realize that you couldn't paper over it because it's actually going to liquidate Bitcoin. Like that's the that's the thing. I'm guessing strategy understands all of that, but the longer this happens and the more entrants that come into this space, it feels like the solutions are going to get worse and worse and worse, right? And it's just going to get more. Before you know it, it's subprime mortgages in AAA mortgage-backed securities all over again.
And there's going to be a lot of lobbying going on. We're trying to put in new or modifying regulations as well, because let's be honest, that people want to get involved and there's some things preventing them. Like you were saying, there's ways around certain things, but still having a politician in your back pocket because of donations and lobbying, it could go a very long way as well. So that's another thing they could.
So the question is, how cynical are we? Like, are we that? Am I so cynical that that strategy would actually block efforts to define Bitcoin being held in capital because their product is the thing that is demanded because of the lack of this clarity, right? Am I so cynical to suggest that? I mean, we should be that cynical just to think about it. I don't think we should necessarily believe our worst instincts, but like I think it's useful to mention it. But I want what I would like to do, what I would like to see happen is general account managers at insurance companies to be motivated to just figure out how to bypass all this shit and either get something simple like the ETF or get real Bitcoin. And so having an appetite for the real thing, right? It's like we want them to actually crave real sushi, not just these California rolls. It's like the big fat American is just creating an industry for seed oils, as opposed to if we actually taught them to taste real food, maybe maybe we avoid another financial crisis.
There's one pending whenever it comes up. These are cyclical events, and we had one just 5 years ago, but that was a forced event. It didn't happen on its own.
You're talking about the financial crisis?
We're talking about closing due to COVID.
But the financial piece of it did happen on its own, and there was like
explain.
So, I mean, everybody in Bitcoin podcast, the 40-hour per week podcast people know about the repo going no bid in September of 2019.
And it's almost done again now, right? If you look at
But there was a mass. I remember February of 2020 before the big day, which was I want to say the 21st or the 22nd, like the day the markets all crashed. I remember driving into work, and there was going to be just a massive across the board corporate bond downgrade, like absolutely across the board. And then basically the Fed stepped in and said, "Well, we will backstop this with an infinite amount of capital." These things were not COVID related, right? This was going to happen anyway. COVID just made us all forget that this took place. I just happened to be at a job where I live and die by the financial markets. And so I remember this very clearly. But like, I'm not saying they did COVID to make us forget this, but
no, I think that's too much.
I'm not saying it.
Yeah, and nor would I even suggest it, just because of all the players involved and all the pieces you have to move on the board. I don't know if they have the ability to control to that manner. So it almost reminds me of a story. I'm going to go on into the weeds here. You're old enough to remember when Coke changed their formula in the 80s and they went to New Coke, and then they reverted back to the old Coke Classic, and everybody was buying up Coke at a higher rate than they were before they made a change. And they asked the CEO, "Did you do this on purpose?" He says, "We're not smart enough to do this, and we're not dumb enough to do this." So
true. I mean, having lived through that, it was, I mean, I was a kid, but I still knew how dumb it was. you know, like we all knew how just stupid this, like, we didn't know going to New Coke was going to be stupid. We just knew after the fact that when it didn't work, like, why'd they do that? Yeah.
I'm still waiting for Crystal Pepsi to come back.
Mm.
And the only reason why is because of the commercials. I don't know if you remember, it was Van Halen's what was the song? Yeah, it was one Van Halen song they played over and over again, and I loved it. Right Now.
I don't remember. I don't remember this, but that was probably a little later on. That was like probably 2000s or late 90s.
No, it's like 92, 91, 93, something like that. So I remember this pretty clear. Anyways, let's go back to your book. I'm curious, did you self-publish it, or did you find a publisher for this?
I'm self-publishing it with the help of Consensus. So Consensus Network, they did like Knut Svanholm's books, who I considered my role model for pretty much all of this. Like, if I could get my book to look like Knut's books and to feel and have, that. So I was really happy when they agreed to help me self-publish.
Canute was one of the first people we ever interviewed, by the way.
Really? Is that right? Yeah, he's like really one of my, like, you know how you could be adversarial to like every like well-known person in the space.
He's such a nice dude.
For some reason, I can never like stay or even be that mad at him. I find him so valuable. I do but this isn't about his books. It's about my book.
Yeah. So what inspired you to do it?
My book's going to be like the NHL '94 books.
There are
without the weight bug. Why did I do it?
Yeah.
Good question. I've been, so after I had a long career, almost 30 years. Really trying to help companies and industries sidestep existential failure. And I was part of pension failures, life insurance. I've seen all these systems fail, and I've seen all of it in my career. And I was like lucky to get shit canned from my job last year, almost at this time. That's why I remember it to year to the day, because it's almost the exact time that I lost my job too. And so I just have been getting so disappointed and frustrated thinking about like the conversation in the public conversation we have about institutional Bitcoin is put it on your balance sheet, go Facebook, go put it on your balance sheet, or go somebody put it in their pension plan. Right. And I wrote an essay like 2 years ago called HODLing is a Human Action. And it was really about how no company is ever going to hold Bitcoin. Like, they're never going to do it. Like, human beings can do it because we can be unreasonable. We can tell people, look, I know you don't like what I'm doing, but I don't care. And, companies that are governed have a very hard time. They have to be very reasonable, rational, and governable. And I had an experience getting my kids' school to accept Bitcoin, which I eventually did.
I don't even know how you approach this subject. This is
a great story. I don't know if you have time for it, but like, I will say that I had this a little bit of a war and a love-hate relationship with the school's dean. And it's like I kept seeing him about problems that I was having. So like in 2022, the communications around like COVID were making me very angry. Like they were like giving statistics, and it was bothering me. So I started at some point, as a parent who had unvaccinated children in school, and I was paying like a severe price, not like intentionally. It's just that they would hide behind Board of Health regulations, and I was starting to really lose patience. And so,
where do you live? Like, what neck of the woods are you in?
I live in Pennsylvania.
Perfect. Okay.
Outside of Philly. I just was starting getting so frustrated that I really started getting aggressive with the school and the employees. And so he actually asked me just to come in. He's like, dude, let me admit to you something. Like, my kids aren't vaccinated either. I'm like with you, but like, you are killing everybody. You are killing the school. He was like, dude, you've got to stop and rein it in. And eventually he called me back like 3 months later. He was like, I saw you had a book the last time you were here. You had a Mises he was Human Action. I was just reading it while I was waiting, and he goes, I've been like trying to do, figure out Bitcoin. He tells me this. And I really want to buy it for the school. And this is like 2022. We're talking now, we're in like June, July 2022. Idea was that it was down, right? Mm-hmm. It was down in the 30s. Anyway, so we talk. I'm like, yeah, dude, I'll totally help you make this happen. Long story short, he eventually got a board approval. It was a finance committee approval to buy Bitcoin, and he started doing it. And then started accepting Bitcoin as donations. And at some point, then the board, not the committee that approved it, but the whole board, figured out that he was buying Bitcoin. Not a small amount either. They had a conniption and shut the whole thing down. And it really upset me. I have to say, I have been did you ever watch Breaking Bad?
I'm aware of it. I haven't watched it.
Well, in the end, I'm not going to spoil the end, but in the second to last episode, the main character, he's in the mountains of New Hampshire, and freezing log cabin, hiding, but plotting how he's going to come back and solve this problem. And that's how I felt about this board. I want to get every single one of them, hold them personally accountable for being idiots. And bottom line, lo and behold, is this really affected how I would view institutions, because even though this is just a school board, it's very representative. I mean, there's no group of people in the normie world that's going to allow somebody to just buy Bitcoin for them. And okay, maybe they do, but after 2x's, are they going to let you keep it? What if they're going to let you keep it if at 5x's? And the whole time they're going to say, well, what if it goes down? There's just no good way. You have to have somebody who can just jam it down their throat, right? So my view was that institutions were never going to do this, okay? And I was getting pretty dismayed, I'd say, about it. I'm here in the space. I have the experience I have. And then I just woke up and said, what if I'm the difference? I have been through a lot. I was a pioneer of liability-driven investments, believe it or not. I have this Forrest Gump kind of history in matters of risk, where I've witnessed and been part of things that were pretty significant. Okay. And this could be my role. And that's what I said to myself. And I said, I'm either going to go back to traditional finance work, or I'm going to take this. I'm going to try to do that. I'm going to try to actually get, what if a willing company really does want to do it? And then who's going to, it's not like I'm looking out in the space and seeing, oh, there's anyone that I even trust talking to that company. So I basically decided I'm going to write this book. I'm going to establish myself. So I'm going to put, it's my proof of work. My whole life story is going to here's what I can do. Here's what I know. Here's how I think. And, and so now it's done. It's very close to, it's being published at the moment. Mm-hmm. And, hoping it leads to the opportunity to actually make this difference in the company.
And when is it coming out? Yeah, when's the expected date that you have anticipated it coming out?
They told me 4 weeks from the time it was pencils down. So that's probably about 3 weeks from now. Something
very close.
That. We're very close. And I'm going to, digital copies, I'm basically going to just, it's going to be like a trivial lightning transaction. It's going to be almost free, basically.
You going to inscribe it?
No, I don't think so. No. I'm not that ack.
It will be forever linked with every Bitcoin note at that moment. But I appreciate you not doing that. Let's not.
But I mean, well, once again, the point of the book isn't. It's not even I want people to read it, but I really want. I foresee a not great situation where Bitcoin is going to be the DEI, ESG of business in the next 5 years. You already start to see what you call what activist investors, right? It's
Hmm.
either activist investor or a board member. You got some guy with who's got Bitcoin up, some guy like us, Bitcoin up his ass, and is like he knows he has enough power to at least force.
Okay. So it could be agenda driven in a way, in a positive way that's going to
Yeah,
enable them to
I'm
push it
saying
this
like
way.
it's going to be, but it's going to be unwillingly pressured onto executive boards. That's what I mean. Like they're gonna executive boards didn't want ESG either, right? But then at some point they capitulated. I mean, I think I I witnessed them laughing at this shit for years and years and years. I've seen like social investing. I've seen all this stuff that companies ignored and laughed at. I was really surprised when ESG and DEI actually happened. I was like, oh my God, they must really have figured out how to harness power because this was laughed at forever. Um, but it was unwilling and it was foisted. And at some point, these executives were they were too afraid not to do it. And all I'm saying is that's where I think that's the position I think they're going to find themselves in with Bitcoin potentially, where it's obviously I think a better outcome, but it may not be a better outcome if they if an executive team does it kicking and screaming. So a big premise of the book is the reason the first section of the book is called Bitcoin is for individuals is that I need people to understand where Bitcoin gets its value from. And I will say it's at least my strong belief it gets its value from individuals seeing value in it, not institutions. There's almost to me, no value of Bitcoin comes from institutional demand. They're buying it, but their wants and desires don't really drive the value of it. It's what people can do with it, right? It's the freedom it gives people, the power it gives people. And I believe individuals will always outbid institutions for Bitcoin, and they'll always value it higher because they've, look at strategy. Look at Michael Saylor, right? He has a good understanding of one feature of Bitcoin, right? And I wrote a lot about it in the book. Savings. He nailed it. He nailed savings. But if you think that's all Bitcoin is, you are, you're not seeing it as valuably as me, right?
Sure.
You're not seeing it as
And
valuably as a lot of people. And
protection
so,
against debasement. That's they're looking at it, I guess, in the lens
and if
of
that's the
that.
only, but Bitcoin is much more than that.
Correct.
And so if you want to
Correct.
limit your view to that, and that's fine. But I guess my original overarching point is that if you actually are not connected to what gives Bitcoin value and you're not connected to the individual, you may wreck your whole industry, right? You'll join the ranks of the FTXs and of the world. You're going to just join the ranks of all of those kind of Celsiuses who just thought they had a good thing that the market wanted, but had no, even Celsius like tapped a little bit into people's fears of holding their own keys, right? But like they weren't, I think it's really important to know what the golden goose is, which is why like Michael, an example of Saylor is that he didn't offer savings to anybody, but to give credit where it's due, he really articulated the savings case really clearly, and it's like I think it resonated very deeply with people, right? So I give him credit for identifying this thing called savings. Not that he was the first to do it, but he's probably the best, right? He's probably the best and most impactful at explaining why Bitcoin is such a perfect savings vehicle. I mean, look, he really did put his ass on the line. He humiliated himself really by saying, I have a savings problem and it has to be Bitcoin. Like there's nothing else that's going to solve this problem. So I got to give it to him for that. I don't believe I don't believe what he's doing now is connected to individuals valuing Bitcoin anymore. I think
That's
he's
fair.
doing something else. And is it bad? I don't know. Is it good? No. But is
The
it bad?
beautiful
I
thing
don't know.
about Bitcoin, though, like the token itself, the coin, you could do what you want with it. You could
That's
buy it, you
right.
could sell it, you could burn it, you could do whatever the fuck, and that's perfectly fine.
So
I have no issues with anybody doing anything what they have with it. Like I'm gonna call them out if they do something stupid, but really, it's up to them. If they want to buy it and do something, they have every opportunity. If they want to trade their time and effort to purchase it and do something stupid, all the more power to them. They're dumb as fuck, but
That's right. And anybody is allowed. And people are going to be surprised, I think, by my explanation of what BlackRock's doing here. In fact, the last year, I started talking about this to you last year when I was on, and I got a big groan. From you. But because I've been developing this conversation for the last 2.5 years about BlackRock and what they're doing. And I think BlackRock is actually solving a very basic problem for themselves. And they're going to be good little boys until they do it. I believe that. I don't think they're not here to make a little extra money. Larry Fink didn't humiliate himself either. Like, these guys humiliated themselves. Like, you think people forgot that Larry Fink spent the last 8 years saying Bitcoin's only for criminals? He really did a heel turn. He didn't do it just to make a couple bucks. Okay. So I write a lot. I cover pretty deeply what I think he's doing. And why.
Do you want to give just
yes. So
you don't have to give too much because you want to make the book as
no, it's fine.
Or give away as much as you want. I don't give a fuck.
Let me try to do it in a couple bullets.
Okay. Well, do what you want.
Do you remember the
2020? I don't give a fuck.
So do you remember the 2022 pension bailout in the UK?
Yes.
Yeah. So BlackRock was the primary investment manager in that for the clients that got bailed out.
Okay.
And my theory is that they'd probably been looking at Bitcoin. They knew enough about it, but weren't gonna do much with it. But I believe that was the moment that kicked off, that tipped them over the edge. Like, so if you like kind of rewind the tape and say, what if all those UK pensions, instead of having all those bonds, what if it was Bitcoin instead? Okay. Here's a couple of things that definitely. So you do have gains, and they do borrow off the gains, which is what they did. They had bond gains, and they were borrowing off of them. And when the gilt shot up in September of 22, it basically caused just a giant margin call, and BlackRock had to sell everything in the sofa cushions to keep their clients from getting liquidated. So first thing to know is that had it been Bitcoin and not bonds, they do not get a call from any government telling them to stop what they're doing. Okay, right? There's no government to call. It's just, okay, who cares if they crush the price of Bitcoin doing this? They just, it just happens. Whereas, that getting a call from the Bank of England, it was not a good day for BlackRock, right? To be told to stop their operations and that there's going to be a bailout. The other thing is that it would have been easier to hedge their clients' borrowing, right? They could liquidity manage. I'm doing air quotes.
Yeah.
But to liquidity manage the borrowing, if you have the ETF, which they now invented, if you have that, then if the price of Bitcoin starts going down, right, you actually have a perfect hedge to cover it. Whereas you have all these bonds, and price of bonds goes down. Yeah, you might have some hedges, but they're not good. They're far from good. And, there's no historical equivalent for what happened in 2022. There's really no historical equivalent for rates just shooting up 500 basis points in such a short time. So if you're doing any liquidity management planning, you would have been like, well, I'm worried about liquidity for a week. So I'm going to protect myself against maybe a 50 basis point change, right? You're not going to, there was 130 basis points in a day on the UK gilt, something like that, right? So there's no way possibly to prepare for an event like that. I believe that BlackRock had this sort of come to Jesus where they were already kind of I think they were a little bit into Bitcoin. They probably knew that it had no counterparty risk and it was much less risky than bonds. But the lack of a country, I think, is a big, big, big feature. And I believe what they want to do now is kick bonds out of their model portfolios and replace them with
Oh,
Bitcoin. And I think it's going to take a long time. And I think I believe they're going to behave themselves until they accomplish this mission.
think of the people you're going to have to convince. Never mind trying to strong arm, but just even have them see it eye to eye that this is the way to go. People that grew up, live and breathe this bond market, and have them say, "No, we're not gonna go ahead with this. We're gonna go with something else."
Yeah, but
That's
2022 it was like it's like the bond market rugged everybody and no one's talking about it, right? 2022 was abysmal. So your risk-free asset had like a 60% loss drawdown, for long bonds. Your risk-free asset for, your Lehman Ag had like a 20% loss. That's just like, so if you're going to like say Bitcoin can't be a risk-free asset because it is drawdowns,
the
if that's
same,
the argument you're hanging on to, I mean, the fact is, well, objectively, Bitcoin has no counterparty risk
right?
and no debasement risk.
Bitcoin
Bonds,
Core is the counterparty risk, I would argue, but that's a different topic
yeah.
altogether.
But I mean, if Saylor was worried about his savings, the flip side of that was Larry Fink thinking about bonds as just an absolute loser. Like I'm basically the biggest bond buyer in the world, and I'm losing. I'm looking at a big time loser every single time, and this is bad. But that was, it's like all of these other things had to come together for him to, to make an existential case. Because you're saying, yeah, how do you convince all these people? Well, how do you convince all these people that like BlackRock's going to go away? I mean, I'm sure we'd all love to see that, honestly, but like, we're not the ones. We're not the ones they have to convince, right? If you're going to convince your board, it's easy to convince your board. Like, if this is existential, this is needed for BlackRock to survive the next 20 years, and that's what it's frankly what a visionary and a board are supposed to do, right? That's not what the board of my school did. They did the opposite.
I love the fact that you're still burning from that, and that
I'm seething. I think I'm actually that. Like a good portion of the energy I have is just from that anger.
It's a very powerful emotion to tap into, and to settle a vendetta. I love it.
I'm like Ron Hextall.
What did he do aside from slash a few guys?
Oh, you remember when he went after Chris Chelios?
I remember he went after a few guys. I think he broke Glenn Anderson's ankle in one game, and he was a real hothead, but still scored a goal.
That's right.
Right? He was very good with handling the puck. And by the way, he had a phenomenal playoff, and this is going way back in 1987. The first Conn Smythe winner to be on a losing team. He had just an incredible run for the Flyers.
Had to get some hockey in.
Have to, yeah. I mean, there's playoff time right now. I'm not really following it all. I know the Leafs played yesterday. I don't even have a clue if they won or lost. I'm so far out of it with modern sports. I don't give a fuck about it, to be honest. But I want to talk about the ETF still, and the ETF that BlackRock now manages, and they offered this almost a year and a half ago, a year and a quarter ago, give or take.
Yeah.
So when they did this, do you believe this offering is a result of their coming to Jesus moment, or is that offering just because others were offering as well, and they just wanted to provide, if they're offering it, we have to provide a similar service so we don't fall further behind?
No,
so
no one was offering it. Nobody was allowed to offer it. In
right,
fact,
but
Larry Fink basically said, "Hey, guess what? You're all getting because I want it."
So he drove that.
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. And so there's a good 3 pages in the book that outlines all of the attempts and all the failed attempts. And I mean, like Grayscale was literally litigating with the SEC at the time for, like the arbitrary and capricious ruling. They didn't, the SEC just was not allowing it. And the fact that and I said something like, it's like, well, the equivalent of Babe Ruth, Ty Cobb, and Barry Bonds basically went into the batter's box and decided that the ETF was happening.
I just want to double back something. Boomer mentions in the chat the German bond almost blew up about a month ago. I totally forgot about that.
That's right. It's a memory hold, man.
Yeah. Any comments on that, or any insight you give on that, or is just this is just par for the course? What's just expected to happen these days?
I mean, I do think we're going to see European rates, go explode at some point. We are really like I think we've sort of defeated them in the monetary war. I think that the U.S. keeping rates high as long as we have, and we'll probably do it again tomorrow.
You think they're going to keep? There's going to be no cut tomorrow. That's your prediction, or
yeah, it's my prediction. I mean,
oh.
I don't really hang my hat too much on my ability to predict these things. I still don't think we're in a rush to lower rates. Nothing is blowing up here as much as the media is trying to make it look like it is. The reality is there is no, there's not enough carnage to, things just aren't that bad.
Who's driving that decision? Is it the Federal Reserve or the White House?
It seems to have been Jerome Powell this whole time. It seems that he really got this posture when Janet Yellen was the Treasury Secretary, that he was just like, not on my watch, bitch. You're not ruining this currency on my watch. I don't want to make him sound like a hero or anything. I just don't. I think he did have that view. And certainly, I mean, look, it's raising rates 500 basis points in such a short time isn't exactly a heroic act, but keeping them at the level that they've been at for the last 3 years is pretty impressive, I have to say.
Yeah, considering just about every other central bank out there has been lowering, as you're mentioning that.
Because everyone's writhing in pain. Like, people have to realize how painful it is. Essentially what he does is takes a magic wand and slashes the value of your bond portfolio in half and leaves it there. And so, I find it amazing that Bitcoiners how many Bitcoiners don't understand that rates are high right now? When they look at these charts and they say, oh, this cycle, we broke the cycle theory. Like, no, dude, rates are high. There's no liquidity. And it's actually pretty remarkable. I'd never talk about Bitcoin price or anything like that, but I have to say it's like one of the more remarkable things that I'm really bullish about is that we were able to get back to the all-time high in these difficult conditions.
That's it. Yeah, I never. That doesn't compute with me because I tend not to follow the central banks in terms of the rates and rates cuts all that much. But you're 100% right. We got to 108K or whatever the fuck it was in an environment where the Federal Reserve didn't cut.
Yeah, that's the most bullish thing I hang my hat on right now is that we slogged through the mud and the hardest monetary conditions Bitcoin has ever seen, and most people alive. It's the hardest monetary conditions we've seen. Not that it's the highest rates, because I grew up when double digits rates, but it's much harder monetary conditions right now because relative to what we got used to. And like I said, relative to anything that's been seen in Bitcoin's life, you have, to me, it's remarkable. It's like when people are like, oh my God, where's the moon? Like, dude, this is it right now. Like, we are doing this in the hardest footing possible. And I really am bullish about that.
Another thing to consider when we got to 108K, maybe this is something else we have to also take into consideration, is what was the value of the dollar when we hit 108K versus, say, in 2021, when we got to 69K. It's a huge difference when you compare the two numbers, but still the dollar was a little bit more valuable back then than it was.
I agree. I still don't like it I don't like that argument. Like, I never liked the argument that it's not a real all-time high because what it took to get, back to this all-time high was far more.
Oh, we had to go through absolute hell, not just with the monetary stuff, but just even internally, like maybe not externally, but tangentially, we're talking about what you mentioned: Celsius going tits up, BlockFi, Terra Luna, Voyager. I'm probably missing a few as a result, and all this shit just created this negative viewpoint on Bitcoin, and Bitcoin, just because it was adjacent to all this stuff, people were selling, people then weren't buying because they looked at it in a negative light, and just with that, still we're able just to climb back up
without liquidity. But I mean, because look, next to nothing matters more than liquidity, frankly, when it comes to what drives the Bitcoin price, right? And so it's
just like any other asset, 100%.
Well, especially any other asset that is dwarfed in market cap by the S&P, right? So the S&P is like 45 trillion market cap. Bitcoin is what 1.7 trillion or something like that. It's nothing. So when the S&P went down by 20% in the last couple of months or whatever it was, you do the math on that. It's like it's 5 Bitcoins of market cap that goes away. We should have gotten trounced. There should have been so much selling to cover the bigger losses in the portfolios. And, again, I'm super impressed that didn't happen.
Well, guys like Sailor out there and everybody else too, but Sailor in particular, 500,000 Bitcoin or so that they scooped up in the past 4 years.
Right. So like when people say, well, why isn't the price like going up when the government announces that they're buying Bitcoin? The liquidity isn't there. When they lower rates, forget about it. I mean, no one's ready for that.
Any thoughts on gold? Because gold had a heck of a run for the past few months and hit numerical all-time high.
I think it's cool. I think it's cool that gold's having its day. I actually think I'm okay with like gold doing some of the hard work for us. So like if gold is gonna do some damage to fiat currencies, I think we should embrace that. I mean, we all know gold has like no value really, right? I don't think in a world where Bitcoin exists, I mean, I don't understand what use gold really has,
The people that are able to store it will make the claim there's value.
That's fine. And that's fine for them.
30 people aren't in that position.
Yes. And that's fine for them. But like, so if gold is going to do some of the dirty work for us, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Right. If we're, it shouldn't be Bitcoin the only one holding the gun to fiat. Right.
Yeah. 100%.
Let gold do some of that. Let gold do some of the dirty work and let them take keep underestimating Bitcoin while we lay in the cut and wait for our day.
So after all this being said, after we talked about Bitcoin, are you going to up your 40 hours per week? Are you going to take it up a notch to get to 50?
I think 40 is good.
I don't even know how to.
Pretty hard to do.
40. Like that's quite a feat given all the other.
I think it's more of a lifestyle. It's more of a way of life. You shoot for it. It's kind of like we had our Bitcoin meetup last night, and we have it at a Chinese restaurant. And it's like, you'll be on like Telegram all month long and everyone's like, oh, seed oils are terrible. But like everyone eats General Tso's chicken.
I like it. Yeah.
Nobody is avoiding seed oils at their Bitcoin meetup, even though they're like, their whole identity is based on avoiding it. 40 hours a week is a goal. And, the more podcasts you listen to, the better person you become. We'll put it that way.
That's a good way to end it. You know what? People out there that are listening to this, I got to give you credit because I'm not much of a podcast listener. For whatever reason, I just don't do it. I produce it, but I just can't bring myself to listen to a lot of shows, which is too bad because there's a lot of good ones out there, including your own, by the way, Fundamentals.
I have 4 podcasts, by the way.
Name them all.
So we got the flagship Rock, Paper, Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have Motivating the Math, which I do with Gary Krause. And that is we're really trying to push also 40 hours of math homework. Math I have a really strong view about math as physical fitness, almost like, as a certain type of fitness, like akin to physical fitness. And I think it's important for people to level up. So we do that. And then I have a podcast called Back on the Chain. It is about the band Fish and its connections, their connections to Bitcoin.
Boomdust was mentioning this. Yeah. Okay.
And then finally, once a month, I have what's called the Sound Coffee podcast with shout out Otis Bittmeyer, master roaster. And I love his beans so much. I wanted to do a podcast with him and establish I wanted to establish his existence like in cyberspace, his coffee shop in cyberspace. So the Sound Coffee podcast is just, you could imagine he and I at his coffee shop having a conversation about coffee.
Those conversations I find are the best when you're just shooting the shit and there's no real agenda or anything. It's just the conversation flows where it goes. And I love those type of conversations the best. Kind of like we had today.
Yeah, and I'm all like, it's all about the conversation. It really is. I mean, we are discovering. It's the only way to really discover what is going on. We have to talk it out, and not with tweets. No, when the boom dust. When Knicks podcast. When will you admit that you were wrong about the Knicks losing in the last round?
I don't even know that they won the series.
They won their first series against the Pistons, and then they did the impossible by winning last night, Game 1 against the Celtics.
Okay, I didn't realize even the Celtics have a good team. I have no fucking clue.
They won the championship last year.
Did they?
Yeah,
Right.
for whatever it's worth.
I love it.
But the NBA, I could do a basketball podcast. I just don't. I don't find it relevant to Bitcoin. So, like, if I thought that it was important, believe it or not, all 4 of these podcasts, I find there are Bitcoiners that I think resonate with it and find it important. And there's some reason why I'm doing it that I don't even understand it yet, but that we'll find out in the conversation.
We've been at this for over an hour.
That's how it goes.
My apologies.
My apologies. That's how it goes with me.
No, because I was hoping to keep you in for about 45 minutes to an hour because that's so much I booked in your calendar, and I try to respect that.
If you don't rein me in, dude, I can do 4 podcasts. Like, if you don't rein me in, man, I'm gonna go. Yeah, I'm gonna run wild.
Any final words before we wrap up this one?
Thank you once again. I always enjoy talking to you, man.
My pleasure, and you're always welcome back to come on a show anytime there's a new development or if you just want to chat. So with that, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed the show. Fundamentals, appreciate you taking the time to come on and chat with us.
Thanks, bud.
Take care.